This is from both. The silence of graves. It has its own special quality. There can be birdsong, wind in the trees, traffic the other side of the churchyard wall. Still, that grave silence makes its own particular space. There's an emptiness you can feel. The birds are chirping, as you'd expect. The wind is blowing, as you'd expect. The traffic is roaring, as you'd expect. But what of the people you know who are buried here? What of the words you expect from them? Not a peep to be had. And so you begin to grieve. But what sort of grief will it be? There are several kinds. One is the grief of unfulfillment. You don't grieve for their death so much. It's the silent emptinesses before death that bother you. The silent emptinesses where lives should have been. Mum and Dad's grave was a neat affair, neither showy nor modest. Black marble. It had cost a lot, but then monuments do. Choosing a cheap gravestone means you're taking a stand against what's expected. After Mum and Dad had gone, I didn't feel like taking a stand against anything. Taking a stand seemed a pretentious idea, surplus to requirements. They were silent now, silent as they had always been. I'd never worked out how or why they got together. I suppose then I've never worked out any convincing reason for my own existence. Funny that. I'd lived with them for 18 years before I went to university, then another 8 after I came out the nick. In all that time I never heard either of them say a kind word to the other. Not that there were many unkind words. They didn't have rows. They just never talked to each other much. Neither of them appeared to see this as a problem. Mum in particular sometimes said how pleased she was to have a happy home. And if you compared her with a lot of people in our estate, she seemed to be talking sense. In our house you never got any swearing, nor any chucked crockery, accusations or threats. Just that silence, that polite disinterest. Dad would sometimes hold forth when he got a bee in his bonnet about something. Mum would just sit there, as if she was waiting for an LP she didn't like particularly, to get to the end of the groove. But he was out in the garden for the most part, doing stuff. And she was around the house for the most part, cleaning stuff. Their paths only really crossed at dinner, which was a bit of an ordeal for both of them. They'd sit at opposite ends of the table, doing their best to fill up the silence with polite, inconsequential words, both desperate to be away from here, so they didn't have to go on staring into the space where there ought to have been a marriage. Silence then, silence now. Nothing's been lost. There was nothing to lose. You can stand for hours by the graveside shaking with grief, though they've both been gone 5 years or so. But it's not the loss of them you're grieving for. Both of them made it into their 70s, and you suppose that's not bad going. Their deaths you can live with. Their lack of lives before death you can't. should it have been like that? Neither of them were bad people. They deserved lives. So why had they both believed so absolutely that all they could ever hope for were existences? That's one kind of grief. Time to go and have a look at another. Let's take a stroll through the churchyard, shall we? Yeah. And you notice that the dead leaves cover the grass and the graves like a crunchy shroud, undignified rustling with every step. Bare tree branches above, droopingly apologetic for having dropped those leaves. Let's forgive them. But the leaves do make it hard to find your way around the place. It's got quite a bit more crowded since you were last here. Some way away, there's the solemn, regular clanging of a foundry. Some huge bit of metal being bashed into shape. Distance and the damp January air lends the sound a melancholy softness. It's almost like a funeral bell. A heavy metal funeral bell for Angie. And here's the grave. White marble this time, a slab rather than a cross, but Angie was never really religious. Full name, of course, Angela Matilda Tipton Sutton. Her dates, 1956 to 1984. The fact that she was a beloved daughter of Irene Sutton, which is a bit of a stretch, though allowable. No mention of the fact that she was a mother, though. That doesn't seem right. On the other hand, her efforts as a lover, as a common law wife, whatever you want to call it, they're probably best left off the marble record. My mate Angie. Does anyone else ever come to look at you? God, Angie, I'm filling up here. I feel ashamed I've not been for so long. It's not that I don't think of you, darling. I think about you all the time. Honest, love, every day. But what good does that do? Seems too easy just to talk to you inside my head. It feels as if you're listening and you're going to talk back at any moment. No. Got to stop this. She's not here anymore. She's not about to say anything.